Hello and welcome to Getting to Know the Garnet. I'm your host, Brandon Hodnett, and on this episode, I'm joined by Swathmore College head athletic trainer, Allison Hudak, who has been with the Garnet since 2008. Allison, thanks for being on the show.
Brandon, thanks for having me.
Allison, when you get up in the morning and you're getting ready to go to work, what are some of the things you look forward to the most about being the head athletic trainer at Swathmore?
Most definitely, I'd say the people. The people are what the students, our staff here in athletics, they are what ultimately keep me coming back day in and day out. I've been here almost 12 years, no, just over 12 years now. And I think by far some of the truest relationships that I've developed in my life have been with people that I've met working here. So I have some alums who are some of my best friends, and I have it all to thank, or I have Swathmore to thank for all of it.
So what's work been like for you since we haven't had any actual games since March? What's it been like for you?
It's a really good question. I just had this conversation with somebody earlier today. I don't remember the last time I sat still in the months of March, April, May in my life. And so for the year to come to as abrupt of a stop as it did was very difficult, both professionally and personally. It was really difficult to sit still and to sort of be forced to process through what was going on throughout the world. So it was a little heavy. It was a lot to deal with at first, but my time has been filled with a lot of telemed or telehealth appointments with student athletes, a lot of meetings with colleagues, a lot of reflection on how our relationships have been developed in the department in the past and the services we've provided and how we can make them better. Of course, that seems to be changing every day now because rules and regulations and recommendations are changing all the time. So some of those meetings no longer apply anymore anyway, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of your work involves helping athletes avoid injury prevention, but then also recovering from injuries. What are just some basic things that students can do as they're training, as they're working out, stretching? What are different things they can do to avoid those injuries in the first place? We'll start with that.
A lot of what I recommend on a regular basis, with or without COVID-19 and quarantine, is to do things, whether it is training, warming up, cooling down, stretching, very intentionally and deliberately. I think if, just like anything else in life, if we do things with intention and very deliberately, then I think that forces us to slow down and be more mindful of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I know based on some of the conversations I've had with some student athletes, I think sometimes, especially in an attempt to just get out of the house and to do something and feel purposeful, sometimes there can be a drive to just sort of work harder and run faster and jump higher and all that. And inevitably with any bit of rest or any period of time where you're not as physically active as you're used to being, injury is inevitable, I think. So luckily, I haven't heard from anybody with any significant or catastrophic injuries up to this point, but I always preach intentionality in our training rooms. Yeah.
It sounds like listening to your body like really would fall under that. Like how do you recognize like what your body is trying to tell you about like I'm close to something bad happening, or like you can push yourself a little bit further? How do you judge that as an athlete?
I think it's really difficult to learn. Some people they just have an innate ability to differentiate between something that is just sore versus something that is legitimately painful. And it is such a relative phenomenon, right? Pain is so relative, and we all experience it differently. And so it's difficult sometimes to convey that to student athletes. And I always really just try to encourage our students to really try to tune in, to their bodies and listen to what to what it's telling us. Because I always say, we lie to ourselves all the time. We lie to everybody all the time. But our bodies will never lie to us. It's just a matter of whether or not we're listening and how well we're listening. Because our bodies will not lead us astray, for sure.
And in general, after an injury has happened, what are basic things that an athlete needs to do to complete that recovery process, to not skip steps, but to get back out onto the field at the appropriate time?
There are a few different schools of thought on this. I know a couple of years ago there was a trend of theories saying that ice actually wasn't as helpful as we once thought. But from my vantage point, I always say ice will never hurt you. Whereas if you use heat in an improper point in your injury or at an improper point in your recovery, it can actually make things worse at times. So, or exacerbate your symptoms. So when all else fails, if there's any question at all, I would certainly choose ice over heating. I would ice for no more than 20 minutes every 2 hours. I know there's a lot of talk about 20 minutes of ice and 20 minutes of heat, and that doesn't seem to be what we practice at all anymore. Again, I always recommend very light stretching. If in the case of a muscle strain or a tendon strain, that we can indeed overstretch those things. And so my recommendation is always to just stretch to the point of tension. Pain is not necessarily for gain, right? It's not. It's also a myth too. So I always say again, ice to the point of tension, or stretch to the point of tension, and again, listen to your body. Elevation, of course, is helpful. Compression is also helpful. But listen to your body. If your body needs rest, it's going to tell you that it needs rest.
What are some of those other myths or misconceptions that you've heard about, just taking care of your body, or different things like that?
I think one of my favorites is having to eat bananas to avoid muscle cramping. There's some really good there's really good research out of Westchester University that supports the fact that bananas are not the end all be all. And so we try to implement that education here as well.
You mentioned Westchester. There's a connection between Westchester and Swathmore. You yourself were a student at Westchester, doing a athletic training program here as a student, and then you eventually get hired here at Swathmore. What was that like, being here as an undergrad student and then coming back for the first time as a full-time employee?
Swarthmore was my first clinical rotation as a fall semester junior at Westchester. I'm not going to say what year it was. I'm sure people who know will do the math, and they can do the math, but I'll leave it at that. But I had no prior point of reference, and so I had zero expectations. I came into Swarthmore really not knowing what to expect, but just being really excited to start learning how to do what I wanted to do. And, I came to realize that there was no better place than here with the guidance of Marie Mancini. And actually, Doug Weiss himself did make a few appearances in the athletic training room while I was here as a student. And so that provided me with invaluable interaction and conversations, and I was really grateful for that opportunity and those opportunities to have those conversations with him and to work under Marie. I still tape an ankle the same way Marie taught me to tape an ankle back then, and I'm still teaching athletic training students how to tape an ankle that way too. And so there's certainly there are several things that I can point out that I learned how to do while I was here, and I still do it that way. And so I'm very grateful for that. But I loved the sense of community here at Swarthmore. I loved thirst for knowledge that the students have, both on and off the field. I remember contrasting conversations that went on in the athletic training room here versus at Westchester, right? And you know, when you're discussing a recent or an upcoming presidential election versus, I don't know, last night's baseball game, you know, the quality of the conversation or the depths of the conversation were starkly different and enriching. You know, I am now an avid listener of NPR radio because of my time here. It started off as just a way to educate myself on current events to be able to carry on conversations in the athletic training room. And now, you know, I'm helping facilitate them. So it's, you know, they've made me a better athletic trainer, but this place has also made me a better person, I think, too.
What is that Westchester Swathmore connection like now?
We still have athletic training students come from the Westchester program. I believe Doug Weiss, who started here in the late 60s as the head athletic trainer, became a preceptor for Westchester back in 1979. So the clinical relationship between Westchester University and Swarthmore College is 40 years and running, right? And so I think there is, as one of the longest established, most well-known athletic training programs in the state, if not the country, I think there's a lot of pride that goes along with Westchester athletic training, no matter where it is, no matter what the context. But I think to have a relationship that's so long-standing, there's also a lot of pride in that too. And you know, we still try to carry out the same philosophy that Doug Weiss had back in his tenure here, to provide thoughtful, thorough, and compassionate care. And that's really what drives us. That's what's at the core of our philosophy as well.
Looking back at last year, the athletic training facilities expanded to a second center built in the Mullen, over in the Mullen Center. What was that transition like, and how helpful was it to have that space on that side of campus?
I think there were definitely times when it was extremely helpful. I think there were other times when, due to timing and just staffing limitations, it sometimes the transition was a little frustrating and maybe not as smooth as we had hoped. But we were really hoping to iron some of those wrinkles out in the spring, and just didn't really get that opportunity. But I know it served us very well when we were hosting NCAA soccer back in the fall. It provided us some distance and some expansion of resources for all the teams that were here that we were hosting. We have a really nice hydrotherapy room that a lot of the athletes took advantage of and really enjoyed. So it's exciting to be able to expand our resources and expand our physical space. You know, I think for the first time in a long time, if not forever, there were more offices, and so we weren't all crammed in the same office in the original athletic training room. So, if nothing else, that was certainly the triumph of the plan. So, we're very fortunate and we're very grateful for the opportunity that we got in attaining that space and being able to turn it into what we have. And we're hoping to be able to utilize it. Not sure how and when, but we're getting there.
I know a lot has changed and a lot is still changing. You mentioned that you've been to all sorts of meetings that some of the stuff isn't even relevant anymore. What are some things that you're seeing, that you're reading about, that's current about whenever we do get to go back to playing sports? What are some things that are going to look different from a health and safety perspective?
Well, like you said, there are a lot of things changing, and anything that I've been drafting with some colleagues is maybe obsolete at this point, because I've heard that the NCAA is about to release further recommendations regarding a resocialization plan for athletics in general anyway. So I may be back at the drawing board completely when it's all said and done, but superficially we are looking to implement a very regular and strict screening process, a pre-screening process, temperature checks, everything that any other medical facility is carrying out right now in terms of screening. That's what we're looking to implement here. For the time being, we will be relying very heavily on telemed appointments. We are going to limit any in-person interactions that we have for obvious reasons until we know a little bit more. And again, we're trying to figure out how social distancing has a place in athletics and how we can make it work. So we're working on it. We're working on trying to come up with a plan that does in fact ensure the safety of our student athletes and our staff as well as we can, while providing the same service or a similar service to the same standards, within the limitations that we have.
Well, back when we were allowed to travel different places, sports has taken us all different places around the globe. What are some of your favorite trips and highlights from those trips with Swathmore teams, or just any other trips that you've taken with athletic teams?
When I first read over this question, of course, the international training trips come to mind, right? That's what comes to mind first and foremost. And from a cultural standpoint, from a personal standpoint, those trips have been very impactful. And again, I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've been afforded while working here. I've even gotten to the point where I send myself postcards from those places to remind myself how lucky I am and how fortunate I've been. And so I have very, very fond memories of all of those trips. I've gotten to see Greece. I've gotten to see the Czech Republic. I've been to Spain twice. And then I've been all over the United States. And I think I've been fortunate enough to witness baseball participate in the College World Series. And I've been fortunate enough to be on the court at a Division III national championship basketball game and volleyball Sweet 16 experience. Those experiences, not only are they pinnacles for playing careers and coaching careers, I think from an athletic training perspective, those are certainly platforms upon which I never really thought I would be. I never really thought about how I would be impacted by it. But I think in those moments and in those experiences, you get to witness your student athletes achieve exactly what they sought out to achieve. And you help them get there. And so at the end of the day, that's ultimately why we do what we do, right? I do this to be able to help our student athletes do what they love and do it as safely as possible. And the fact that we've had so much success recently and the fact that I've been able to witness that firsthand has been incredible.
The success that our student athletes have been experiencing the past couple of years has been amazing, for sure. Allison, switching gears a little bit, I remember a couple of years ago talking with you. I don't know how serious, how joking it was about starting a food truck potentially. And and so I know you like to cook. If you had your own food truck and you could set it up, on Fieldhouse Lane there, what would you sell from that food truck? What would you make?
I always said I wanted to have a nacho truck because I thought nachos are something that everybody likes and they're pretty versatile and you can do pretty much anything with them and put any kind of spin on them you want. But I'm also very drawn to very comforting and I guess ethnic foods that I grew up with my Eastern European family. Though I understand that pierogies and smoked kielbasa may not be the ideal or optimal post-training meal. Goodness, this is a hard question. mean, I guess tacos and nachos are the easiest things, and again, you can fill them with whatever you want. But and when I say easy, I mean just versatile and accessible and relatively cheap to make. But goodness, you really threw me with that one. No, it's okay. It's okay. That was a great question.
What are some things that you would just like to cook personally, as you like for yourself, or what are some things you enjoy making in the kitchen?
You know, I think this quarantine gave me an opportunity to rediscover the kitchen. And so I've always found a lot of comfort in soups, stews, anything that you pretty much make something out of nothing, right? And you know, I think they're very comforting as a consumer, and then also to create it's also very rewarding. And so my friends and I always joke around that I would be really good on Chopped because I can come up with things pretty well on the fly with very little. And so, you know, I think I've spent a lot of quarantine making a lot of different soups and trying to utilize everything I have and not you know, minimize waste and whatnot. But I recently got a grill, so I've been experimenting with that. But I think anything, I'll try to make anything. And I often say that I wish I lived more of my life the way I cook. You know, it's pretty fearless, it's pretty ambitious, and humble too. So I really I've been having a lot of fun getting back in the kitchen.
I like that idea for life. Live it like you are in your kitchen. Like that's.
You know, you're not afraid to make a mistake. You can always improvise. It's usually edible, and there's always room for improvement. You know, so.
I like that. Allison, what's something fun about you that we don't know?
I think I've actually spent the most time thinking about this question because I think it's been difficult to answer. But I just recently became an aunt to identical twin boys. So that's been a large part of my focus in quarantine as well. I'm gearing up to take my own self-quarantine to be able to hang out with them. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, I bought myself a stand-up paddleboard for my birthday.
Cool.
And so I've been out on the water a couple times, and I'm looking forward to getting out there a lot more too. It's about as socially distanced as I can get too. So I can get out on the water and do something and still be within a radius of people, but not, you know, built-in radius, right? So.
Yeah. Anybody gets too close, just push them away with your paddle.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Allison, any final thoughts you want to share with us as we're wrapping up this interview?
Oh no, Brandon, I appreciate the opportunity. To my Swathmore community, I miss you guys like crazy, and I'm looking forward to getting back here and getting after it.
Allison, thanks so much for joining me today on Getting to Know the Garnet. I hope you are staying well and staying healthy.
Thank you, Brandon. Same to you.